Trump sent the National Guard to Washington, D.C., not only to fight crime, but apparently to do beautification and even landscaping. Is this bold leadership or a dangerous government overreach? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Security Bros. I'm Ken, this is James, and as you said, that is a bold move.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
The question is it a crazy move? Let's get into some background on this first, right?
Bring it back, background.
A little bit of background. In August, Trump invoked Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act, which is basically to declare a crime emergency and shift control of the Metropolitan Police Department to the federal government. But the problem is now that you got federal, type people with National Guard stuff, all with local police, a little bit overlapping, right? There's that there. In a recent poll from Reuters, it said that only 38% of Americans were on board with this. What was your question beforehand?
Was it crazy? Did you
crazy?
give what the stat, what you said 1,000 people were polled, but what was the end result?
38% were in approval.
Were in approval, and then the other group, not approval.
Yep. I want to do the math.
That's what was it, 62%?
Yeah, that's what I didn't want to say bad math.
We know that most people not cool with it in the 1,000-person group that was asked. But the question is it crazy? It's bold for sure, but is it crazy? Is it dangerous? Is it tyranny?
I think we have to kind of look at it objectively, right? And what I like to do, as we all know, is do a little bit of a pros cons list.
You do.
Right? I love me a pros cons list.
Robin, get me my legal pad. It's pros and cons time.
In the pros category, you could argue that having the National Guard there would give a little bit more rapid response to the local police department. If there was issues or they were overburdened, they could call those guys for some backup.
Arm it up.
A little bit more visible action, right? And what I mean by this is, more police and kind of National Guard folks you have around. It gives the sense of safety and security.
Can you see them though?
You can see them.
Because don't they wear camouflage?
So not all the time.
Oh.
Yeah. You mostly see heads. Then you have maybe a pro. This is kind of a little bit gray for me. You have non-police support, which is the cleanup task, right? So they're helping with, cleaning up like homeless encampments, with trash, with doing landscaping, stuff like that. I kind of feel, right.
I don't want to do that.
I feel like maybe that's not really a National Guard task. It could be maybe outsourced to landscapers. But
local business.
It is nice that the National Guard is taking the landscaping jobs away from the police so that they can focus on policing. So that's
Police were doing that?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't think so.
One last pro could be that, they can assist with, finding stolen cars, weapon seizures. I know that for me, when I've been heading out of D.C., on some of the main thoroughfares out of D.C., there'll be all kinds of, police on the side, and I'm not entirely sure what they're looking for, but they do seem to be pulling people over and, stuff like that. So
yeah, well, they pulled me over, the National Guard.
Yeah.
And they're like, you have any weapons? And I was like, dude, get your own weapons. You're the National Guard.
Here comes some cons, right? So we need to weigh this out. It could be a little bit of overreach, a little bit of a slippery slope. You start sending in the military to do police work. You kind of have people feeling like we're in a bit of a militarized police state, which people were already talking about before they sent in the actual military to police. You start to have accountability issues. So the National Guard reports to either their state person that's in control or, the president, who's the commander-in-chief. So not the local police. Then you can have displacement and not actually solving the root issues. So if you have the National Guard coming in and just doing a bunch of this work all at once and things look like they're cleaned up, are you actually solving the real issue, or are you just kind of burying it and it's going to pop back up as soon as the National Guard goes back home, right? And then lastly, you kind of have perception and fear, which is a negative. If you have all the locals feeling like, they're being taken over by a military state, that could not be a good thing. Personally, I've been down there. It hasn't felt that bad. I know a lot of the guard situation was localized, I believe, around the main station, the train station down there.
Okay.
And I didn't spend a lot of time there, But in a lot of the other places, I spent a lot of time driving around all parts of DC. I did notice a higher police presence, but it didn't feel like over encumbered, like military is here to like take over, right? When does a city's disorder and excessive crime warrant bringing in military or National Guard into a city?
Maybe there are occasions when it does, but I don't know that there are, because in the case of Washington, D.C., the crime is there, I think, on purpose. Not necessarily that there's a cabal and a conspiracy to create crime, but it's there on purpose, as in very specific actions have happened that lead to very specific end results,
right,
which is crime. And so I believe that when crime happens in a community or a city, that on some level, everybody in that area that like lives there is responsible for that crime. They've enabled it in some way, like we all do. You choose to live in a place, you choose to fund that place, you choose to like vote for the politics of that place, right, that lead to the crime. You also choose to turn your head and ignore crime because it's inconvenient and you hope somebody else will deal with it.
Right. Oh, that's not my problem.
And then we've made a whole video on this, how city officials, they specifically do things that lead to the crime. I don't know that and they're trying to make the crime. Sometimes I wonder if they are. Like if they just want to make the crime so that people rely on them to like solve it.
But you need to make it so unappealing to do the bad thing. Don't just let the guy right back out. Does DC's special status, being a federal district and not a state, change the calculus on the whole bringing in National Guard, in your opinion?
I think the calculus does change because it's not a state. And one of the things about America that some people don't know is that every state has its own constitution and its own government. Every state was designed so that, I mean, it's a union. It's a union of separate states that all functioned independently. I mean, they still do. And so they all have their own like military, technically.
Right.
And they're all supposed to function as a union. Right. Which is why it was such a big deal that when states wanted to secede, that Washington did not let them secede, even though they had every right, if they want to secede, to do so.
Well, and which is why Washington was set up as a district, if my memory serves correct, because they needed a place for the federal government to live that wasn't in one of the states, since they were...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I can see why DC would be treated separately from other ones. Yeah. However, I don't see this as being an isolated use of the military, because first of all, if you think about, I think you might have mentioned something about setting a precedent.
Well, they do love a good precedent.
They love their precedent.
Yeah.
And so like you look at some of the stuff they were doing in 2020, like dispatching military, and sure enough, here we are again. They always find a crisis. And they aren't trying to keep it to DC. Like Trump is trying to make this happen in other places, including Baltimore.
Yeah. Like
Baltimore has a problem. And, you know, a major reaction to that, a major undertaking may be just the thing that's needed to shake things up. But the problem is that it doesn't get rid of the underlying problem. Right. And as soon as they're gone, you go back to having the exact same problem with an additional problem of the precedent that was set, where now military gets to just be like stuck based on the administration. So like Trump with his administration says, I'm going to dispatch military how I want. And then some other administration now, because of that precedent, can get away with doing the exact same thing. And so now you haven't really solved the underlying problem, but you have created a second problem. That's the problem.
Well, I think that sometimes, like you said, Baltimore has a problem and maybe they need a shakeup. But I would argue that perhaps Baltimore has a problem and Baltimore needs to be able to fail. Sometimes to make something stronger, you need to actually let it fail. If the little sheep can't walk and you keep just carrying it everywhere, its legs are never going to get strong. Same thing where the government keeps bailing out, say, like auto companies, right? Maybe the company should just fail, and that would leave room for a stronger one to come up. Sometimes the government doesn't need to fix everything in every single state and every single place. If Baltimore said, hey, we have a problem, we're really trying to fix this, can you send National Guard for backup? Because we don't have enough police. I'm all for that. But just the president picking up the phone and saying, hey, you got a problem. I'm going to go fix your problem. It's like, no, that's not, no, this is our state. This is our city. You can't just come in and tell us what to do. You're the federal government, right? Do you think that this is going to solve crime meaningfully in Washington, D.C. and sustainably? Or is this more of like a symbolic, superficial, short-term kind of a thing?
I think it's a short-term thing, but I'm sure someone could argue that once people get a taste of a better city, one with less crime, and they see that that's a possibility, then maybe they could make it happen without the guard, theoretically.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's what's going to happen.
If they can make a meaningful difference to the point where it's felt, like a felt change in the city, maybe get some of those scooters off the streets that are always almost running into me. Do you have anything to add?
Only that if you liked this episode, like it so we know, and share it so your friends know.
Bye. Also, I have my closing thought.
Okay, continue.
Yeah. In some cases, even flawed efforts can bring short-term benefits, but benefits.
This brought to you by Kaiser Permanente.
Kaiser Permanente. In some cases, even flawed efforts can bring short-term benefits, but those benefits will always come with a cost.
They sure do, James.
That's right.
And you know what I think? If you enjoyed this episode, like it so we know, and share it so your friends know.
Bye.